Are you fortunate enough to have a company pension for when you retire? Congratulations! But be aware that traditional retirement planning changes when you have a pension. I'm going to describe 5 factors you should consider when making your plans. I will include a case study that explains the differences, highlights the differences between having a pension and not. So stick around. Hi, I'm Scott. I was a college professor for many years, and now I teach couples like you how to clarify your goals, master your money, and gain confidence as you enter the next chapter. Let's get started. Factor number 1 is just to recognize the value of your pension. Let's suppose you're going to get $2,000 per month, which means $24,000 per year. Well, what would that take? How big of a retirement plan, how big of a IRA would you need to generate $24,000 per year of income? Well, you're probably familiar with the 4% rule that says you can safely withdraw 4% of your savings. Well, 4% inverted is 25. So if we take $24,000 per year times 25, that gives us $600,000. What does that mean? That means your pension is equivalent to having an additional $600,000 in savings. Well, why is that important? Well, because you might see a lot of rules of thumb about how much you should have saved, what your net worth should be. So just remember, your $24,000 pension actually has a potential value of $600,000 per year. Factor number 2 is to recognize that your investment strategy might change. Now, the short answer or the short story behind investing is that recognize you're going to have a collection of stocks and bonds. You buy stocks for their long-term growth, recognizing that in the short term, they might go up and they might go down. You also buy bonds for their long-term conservative approach or their stability. So although they're not going to go as much up each year, they won't go down as much either. So you typically have a blend of stocks and bonds. Well, a common strategy at retirement is to have 60% stocks and 40% bonds. This blend gives you enough growth going forward from your stocks, but also protects you with your 40% bonds. Well, that's in the traditional retirement mode. How does that change with a pension? Well, imagine if you've got this pension along with Social Security and most of your desired income is paid by these two sources, then you're going to rely less on your savings. Now, this can go in one of two directions. One could argue that since my retirement savings is not as important now, I can actually afford to be more aggressive and have more stocks than bonds because it doesn't really matter in the short run whether they go down or up as much. I'm not relying on it. Or you could argue the opposite that says, since most of my money is already guaranteed, I really don't need to take any additional risk with my retirement. And so maybe instead of 60-40, we go down to 40-60 or even 30-70. So it's hard to say what the right answer is, but just recognize that your investment strategy probably will be influenced by the fact that you have a pension. Factor number 3 is inflation. Unfortunately, most pensions do not increase each year. Unlike Social Security that has a cost of living adjustment that increases each year, pensions are often the same from one year to the next to the next. Now, you might really luck out and have your pension does adjust because of inflation. But this discussion is about for the vast majority of pensions that don't increase. So let's talk again once about that $24,000 pension, $2,000 per month. So in year 1, you get $24,000. In year 5, you still get $24,000. But if we factor in a conservative inflation rate of 3% each and every year, in year 5, that same $24,000 is only going to get you roughly $21,000 worth of goods and services compared to 5 years prior due to the eroding value of inflation. If we go out to year 10, you're still getting $24,000, but now it's only worth about $18,000 in today's dollars. And then we project out into year 20, that same $24,000 now is only buying you about $13,000 worth of goods and services. Now, there's not much you can do about that other than to be aware of it when you factor in your plans for retiring. Now, if you'd like a second opinion or a trusted mentor, I help couples like you create a custom retirement plan for a flat fee. To learn more, click on the link down below in the description, learn more about me and my process, and then schedule a free introductory call. Factor 4 is to recognize that when you start your pension, you might have a choice of what's called single life or dual life benefits. Single life says the company will pay their recommended amount or their agreed upon amount each and every month for the rest of your life. But when you die, payments stop. If, however, you select dual benefits, presumably you and your married spouse, then the payments continue for as long as either one of you live. Well, that could be really beneficial if, in this case, your spouse lives much longer than you. He or she will continue to get your benefits for an extra 10 years, 15 years, could be very valuable. Now, that sounds like an easy choice then. Why not always pick dual benefits? Well, because the dual benefits are generally going to be less, well, always going to be less, maybe 10 to 20%. So imagine a scenario where John is going to get $3,000 per month for single life. But if he chooses dual life, he's going to get less than that, maybe $2,600. Well, now the choice isn't as clear. It really always comes down to how long are you and your spouse going to live? The actuarial tables will tell the company and or the insurance company what the break-even analysis is, and that's all factored into what they're offering you. So in your case, if you're trying to maximize those benefits, it's a matter of how long will you both live. Hard to say what is the best choice, but I would normally recommend for married couples to choose that dual benefit. So even though you're getting a little less each and every month, your spouse is going to have a much more predictability and comfort and ease of mind that payment will continue after your death. All right, let's look at a case study. Imagine John and Mary, married. John at age 62 is going to get $3,000 per month in, let's just say, joint benefits now. So they consider the option and they want Mary to continue to get payments. So they're going to look at $3,000 per month. Combined Social Security, when that kicks in, probably a few years from now, they're going to get $3,500 per month. So combined between the pension and the Social Security, they're getting $6,500 a month. Now they're in luck because they've calculated that their yearly living expenses or monthly living expenses are only $6,000 per month. So they're golden. Their living expenses are paid by two sources of guaranteed income. Now they happen to have saved $400,000 in retirement accounts. So that $400,000 is going to be a great cushion for them to be able to use on travel or gifts or just what if scenario. But the alternative is what if John didn't have a pension? Still retiring at age 62, and they're not going to start Social Security just yet. But when they do, once again, their combined Social Security will be $3,500. But their living expenses are still that pesky $6,000. That means that they're $2,500 short for living expenses that they're going to have to start withdrawing from their retirement account. Well, if we use that calculation again about that 4% withdrawal rate, if they need an additional $2,500 per month, that is what, $30,000 per year, times that factor of 25, the inverse of 4%, and that means that they are going to need about $750,000 in savings. Whereas before, when they had the pension and they only had $400,000, they were in great shape. Now, without the pension, they're going to need at least $750,000 to be comparable. So, big difference between a pension and not a pension. And the fifth factor, and potentially the most important, is you might be given a choice with your pension to get a monthly payment for the rest of your life or a lump sum payment. Now this calculation can get pretty involved, so I'm going to only do the highlights of what you might be considering. But think about John. The pension company has said we will give you $2,800 per month or $700,000 lump sum. Now, John and Mary are running the numbers thinking, well, what's most advantageous for us? Always once again comes down to, now they've chosen dual life again, depending on how long they both live, choosing $2,800 per month might be a great strategy. It gives them peace of mind. They don't have to worry about how their money is invested. It keeps them on an even keel, right? So that they can't be tempted to spend more than they should. But compare that with taking the $700,000. They say, well, if we invest this and start pulling money out at 4%, what will that be? So if they withdraw from that investment of $700,000 at 4%, that's going to generate about $2,300 per month, less than the $2,800 per month that they are guaranteed. But that's only at a 4%. If we increase that to 5% or at 6%, let's do 6%. At 6%, they're going to be able to withdraw $3,500 per month, which is above that $2,800. So no obvious answer here. We want to factor in how long do we think both of them will live? What is the health of both of them? And what is their comfort level? This is probably the most important question with the risk of being in the market versus having a steady income going forward forever. So difficult to say what the right answer is, but at least this highlights some of the differences that you should, or at least factors that you should be considering. So now we know that having a pension can be a great boost to your retirement plan, but it does add some little nuances to be aware of. Now, if you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe so that you can see future videos as well. Until then.